course, tonight, Michaud is a man who, in a city obsessed with craft brewing, has pushed beyond the local flavor of Portland.
When he was just 27 years old with a pregnant wife, Michaud opened Novari Res, offering beers from all over the world and urging people to expand their palates. It was a pretty unconventional concept in this market, but it worked, which led Michaud to open a restaurant, brewery, distillery combo along Commercial Street in Portland.
Through Liquid Riot, he continues to push the boundaries of flavor, and it's winning him quite a few accolades.
I think the seed really got planted back in high school when I was drinking beer when I wasn't supposed to be, as most high school kids do, and I was introduced to Allagash White, a Belgian-style beer. And so I got a taste for it, was interested in it, and I later on got a homebrew kit as a birthday present just when I was just out of high school, and got interested in the process of making beer. And that was actually more interesting to me than drinking beer, was making it, was creating it.
So while most people were drinking like Schlitz and PBR, you were drinking Allagash White.
I was grabbing a bottle of Allagash White, which had a picture to swirl the bottle and dump it into a wide mouth glass. So at high school parties, I'd dig through whoever houses, their parents' cabinet and grab a nice wine glass and swirl the bottle and dump it in. I'd be walking around with a wine glass of Allagash White, and people would be crushing cans of Pabst or Bud or whatever.
So you're working in a bar, and you decided to start Novari Res. First of all, how old were you when you opened up Novari?
I was 28. No, I was 27. I was 27 when I opened Novari. We had just moved, my wife and I had just moved from Western Massachusetts, where we were living, where I was managing a beer bar there, creating a business plan. Moved back to Maine.
What made you think that Portland, Maine was ready for this bar that focused on international beers?
Maine's a beer drinking state. It always has been. Portland's a beer drinking town, and it always has been. Coming back to visit my folks, through my university studies after I left high school and traveled abroad, and always come home when I go out downtown and I'd see people drinking beer, and they're drinking good craft beer. But a lot of it, most of it was Maine made, which is great. But I had been traveling abroad and was exposed to all these other amazing European beers and Asian beers, and a whole different flavor profile, a whole different spectrum. And I had been working in a beer bar in Western Mass that also sold these styles of beers, international beers. And I came back to Portland and said, you know what, I bet this would work here, because there's people that are ready for other things besides domestic craft beer.
So you're selling other people's beer. Was it always in the back of your mind from those late high school days of, I want to brew my own stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I was homebrewing the whole way through. On the weekends, on days off, I was still brewing in my garage and in my driveway. And after a number of years at Novari, I got to the point where I came in from a brew day and looked at my wife. I said, babe, I got to just go pro. I was like, I'm doing all these recipes, I'm doing all this work. Let's just open our own place, because that's really what I wanted to do. Here at Liquid Riot, I'm able to really hone in on my creativity and have a venue for that.
And that creativity has won you some awards, most recently Blushing Star, which has Maine peaches.
Maine-grown peaches. We entered a few beers and said, well, maybe they just give us some notes on how to make our beer better. But the notes we got were, you got gold. You got the best rated Brettanomyces beer in the world. So that was pretty amazing, pretty humbling experience to win that.
At this point, there are tons of breweries in Maine, and even tons of breweries just in Portland. Are you ever worried at all about sort of an oversaturation of the market?
There's definitely talk about that right now. I think there's over 120 breweries in Maine, which has more than tripled in the past 5 years since we opened this place. And it's a little concerning, especially for the breweries that are production breweries, I would say. As you can see, we're not a production brewery. So this concept is a little different, where we have a full restaurant, we have a full bar, so we have on-premise. And that's mainly what we're trying to do, is service the customers who come here to have an experience eating and drinking and hanging out here. So then when we get into the Hearts Cut, that's ethanol. And ethanol is safe for human consumption, fairly safe in small quantities.
So what you're telling me is this is fairly safe to try? Totally safe.
Okay. As long as you don't drink that whole bucket.
Oh, well.
But, we'll get a couple straws and see what we can do.
What were the steps to kind of get into distilling?
Any whiskey distillery is essentially making beer. You have to brew first, brew and ferment, and then you distill it. So we already had half that equipment to make booze. We just needed to get a still.
Between the two businesses, it sounds like unique is sort of a theme. Is the idea to stand out in this world?
Maybe, you know, I think maybe I've always stood out a little bit. If you talk to my parents especially, and the kids I grew up with, I think I've always kind of found my own way a little outside of the norm.
I think that's my favorite part of his story, is that he grew up in Maine and then left and traveled the country, traveled the world. That's actually where he met his wife. They both were really into that. And he came back to Maine to open his businesses. I love that.
That is a story you hear a lot, not a lot, but you hear with some frequency though with entrepreneurs. They go out in the world, they come away with some ideas, and they, rather than saying, I want to take that idea and I want to plant it in the place where they discovered it, they say, I want to bring it back to Maine and plant it and then make it grow.
Yes, yeah. Well, please keep coming back to Maine.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely great.